The mysterious deaths of Hollywood icon Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy left many unanswered questions.
On February 26, 2025, Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, were discovered deceased in their Santa Fe residence. Because of the peculiar circumstances surrounding their deaths, which occurred only days apart, an investigation was launched right away. Now, what the medical examiners found and told the FBI was so startling that it made Gene Hackman's family shudder. It will all become clear why his family is so deeply upset after you hear what the FBI has officially confirmed. Therefore, prepare yourself before you go anywhere, because this story is going to take a turn that nobody anticipated. First, finding startles family. For more than 16 years, Roland Lowe Begay and Jesse Kessler had been caring for the Hackman home. From the creaking wooden gate to the way the wind always howled through the woods at night and the subtle scent of old books and cedar coming from the home, they knew every inch of the property like the back of their hands. Something inside of them twisted with uneasiness when they noticed the front door wide open on Wednesday, February 26th, when they arrived for their regular maintenance check. It was the kind of instinct that tells you something is off but cannot be explained. After a brief moment of hesitation during which they exchanged glances, they carefully moved forward. There was silence. Too silent. There was no background TV noise, no soft conversation, and no music coming from inside the house. There was just an unsettling silence that caused the hair on the backs of their necks to stand on end. They rapped. Called. Nothing. They looked through the windows at that point. The caretaker of the subdivision called 911 right away. As he attempted to describe what he was seeing, his voice faltered. "Please send somebody really quick," he said, his words brimming with eagerness. Although he was unaware of the specifics of what had transpired inside that house, he was aware that it wasn't good. Nothing could have prepared Gene Hackman's family for the tragedy they are currently suffering in real life. Despite the decades he spent creating strong characters on screen, the FBI's official report on his cause of death was just released, and the information is enough to chill anyone. Was there a nefarious undertone beneath years of Hollywood glitz? Is there a secret? Or is there a startling turn of events that nobody anticipated? Stay tuned, because the most disturbing revelation occurs at the very end. You won't believe the details that have emerged. He noticed Arakawa lying on the floor, not moving. Did she have a pulse? Was she simply not conscious? He was unaware. He only knew that he needed assistance, and he needed it quickly. As he carried on talking to the operator, his voice broke with emotion, his thoughts running through all the worst-case scenarios. Emergency personnel were confronted with a somber image that sent shivers down their spines when they eventually arrived. In the lavatory, Arakawa lay on her right side with a space heater inches from her head. There were spills all over the counter, and an open bottle sat menacingly amid them. A terrible picture was produced by the sight of everything. Had she just fallen? Was she attempting to grab her prescription? Numerous inquiries, but no prompt responses. Then came the shocking revelation that everything was even more disturbing. A second body. Hackman was in a similar condition in the mudroom by the kitchen. The once warm and lively house had now turned into something quite different, silent, creepy, and lifeless. What's odd, though? Of their 3 dogs, 2 were still alive and appeared to be in excellent health. However, Zinna, their 12-year-old Australian Kelpie mix, wasn't as fortunate. Nobody knew why she was dead, only a few steps away from Arakawa. Were the causes natural or something else? In a case with far too many disturbing aspects, it was just one more piece of the puzzle. It became evident that this would not be a straightforward case when Santa Fe County Sheriff Adan Mendoza became involved. He acknowledged that it's not normal to find 2 people deceased in the residence, and he was correct. There was something wrong with this whole situation. How likely was it that 2 people would pass away in the same home at roughly the same time without obvious evidence of foul play? To put it mildly, it was strange. The authorities obtained a search warrant without any delay. They were going to investigate every possibility that something nefarious had occurred in that house. They went into each room and noted all of the medications they could find, including typical painkillers, thyroid medications, and blood pressure drugs. Could one of these have contributed to the events that transpired? Then there was another disturbing insight. It had been almost 2 weeks since the couple was last spotted by the maintenance staff. Additionally, when did they review the security footage? Arakawa was last captured on camera on February 11th. This indicated that before anyone discovered them, their remains had been in that residence for days or even weeks. Everyone who listened to the case shuddered at the mere concept. When officials called Hackman's daughter, she was so distraught that she was hardly able to talk. She was crying because she couldn't even comprehend the horror of what had transpired. During the call, Joey Padilla from the Santa Fe Tales boarding facility was present and saw firsthand the suffering this family was going through. The Santa Fe Fire Department and the New Mexico Gas Company were called in to inspect all of the home's systems as detectives attempted to put together the timeline. Did a gas leak occur? A problem with carbon monoxide? Is there anything that could explain the strange circumstances surrounding the deaths of a dog and two otherwise healthy people? However, nothing caught my attention right away. No definitive solutions, just a few more inquiries. The atmosphere surrounding this case was oppressive. Even though there was no overt indication of foul activity, the circumstances seemed too uncanny to be a coincidence. Two individuals, just one residence, not a witness, no apparent reason for dying, only a profound sense of discomfort, quiet, and unresolved questions. Nobody was certain, and for that reason, it was so horrifying. Investigation timeline detectives immediately saw anything strange. No evidence of forced entry was found. There were no smashed windows or trashed areas of the residence. Nothing shouted, "home invasion" or "robbery gone wrong." And no doors were kicked in. The bodies were in a serious condition of decay when the first rescuers got there. That was tragic in and of itself, since it indicated that Gene and Betsy had been there for some time before anyone discovered them. Next to Betsy was an open prescription bottle with pills strewn all over it, which was a little but telling detail. It's not something you simply ignore, though. Was there a chance it was an accident, or did they commit suicide? Perhaps even a situation where one spouse dies and the other is left to fend for themselves? All reasonable inquiries. However, the team required hard, unvarnished information. In order to rule out any outside influences, they began testing the surroundings. A spill of gas? Perhaps poisoning from carbon monoxide? When the New Mexico Gas Company arrived for a comprehensive inspection, they discovered some gas seeping from a stove burner, but it was only around 0.33%, not nearly enough to be lethal. They next looked into a few more possible dangers in the house, such as the gas log lighters in the fireplaces and the water heater. None of the code infractions appeared to be fatal, even though, let's face it, many older homes had them. Thus, the mystery grew more complex. The investigation team had a ton of evidence by the conclusion of that first week. They discovered a 2025 planner, many prescriptions, Tylenol, and 2 cell phones, which, let's face it, are informational goldmines in contemporary investigations. Let's take a moment to consider this. Does it imply that someone wasn't anticipating a catastrophic event if they were making plans for 2025? Perhaps, perhaps not. However, it's an important detail. Among the most important pieces of proof, surveillance video. Investigators were able to piece together a partial timeline by tracking Betsy's last known movements. She was spotted on February 11th in a number of locations, including picking up their pet from the veterinarian, visiting Sprouts Farmers Market in the late afternoon, swinging by CVS Pharmacy, and returning to their gated enclave just after 5 p.m. She was never seen alive on camera again after that. However, what about Gene? Things started to get extremely intriguing at that point. On February 18th, his pacemaker data revealed an unexpected, atypical heart rhythm. He was still alive for a week following Betsy's alleged death, if that is true. A week. Is it possible? Did he know she was no longer there? Was he making a help call? Was he even aware of what was going on? It's difficult not to imagine an old man by himself in his house, coping with the unthinkable. Although the autopsy results provided additional information, certain questions remained. Given that the pacemaker data indicated Gene outlived Betsy by days, the medical examiner found it odd that both bodies displayed comparable levels of decomposition. Another unsettling aspect is that Betsy's face was swollen and her limbs had begun to mummify, which may have been accelerated by a space heater discovered close to her body. Isn't that a rather eerie picture? The crew kept working on every lead in the interim. In search of any last emails that would provide a clue as to what was happening, they went through Gene and Betsy's correspondence. The last email you are aware of? On February 11th, Betsy had called her massage therapist at 11:21 a.m. Then there was radio silence. Additionally, they retrieved security footage from nearby residences in an attempt to identify any oddities. Additionally, they examined the computer systems in the couple's cars to see whether they had driven any place unexpected, because technology is both amazing and a little scary. This is where things became annoying. This was not a clear-cut crime, and the truth remained hazy in spite of the amount of evidence they were gathering. Sheriff Mendoza was dedicated to maintaining openness, providing the public with frequent updates and emphasizing that even if foul play didn't appear likely, the case was still open. And what's the most important missing component? The reports from toxicology. However, it can take up to 3 months for those results to appear. 3 months. When you're trying to put together what happened, that seems like an eternity. Then there was the problem of surveillance footage, or more specifically, its absence. Investigators had to rely on the nearby properties and the gate's security system because the Hackman residence lacked cameras. Although it wasn't flawless, it did contribute to the reconstruction of at least some of their last days. What does that leave us with then? The probe is still ongoing as of right now. It is one of those incidents that is simply eerie. There was no overt foul play, no obvious reason for the death. 2 individuals who appeared to be in good enough condition to be out conducting errands and planning for the future vanished out of thin air. What if I told you that Gene Hackman's family is completely devastated by the FBI's recent shocking announcement? When you believe you have everything worked out, the medical examiner's report comes out with information that nobody anticipated. What precisely did the FBI find then? What's upsetting Hackman's family? What impact does this have on his legacy too? Stay with me because this story will only become wilder as it progresses, and I promise you won't want to miss the shocking conclusion. Key findings from the medical examiner. Their final moments were tragically depicted in the full autopsy report that Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Heather Jarrell eventually made public. The details are just hefty, to be honest. Let's begin with the renowned actor Gene Hackman, who has been in some of the best films ever made. It was found that atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease and hypertension were the cause of his death. That indicates that his heart was near its breaking point. According to the autopsy, he had serious heart issues, including signs of several surgeries, past heart attacks, and essentially a heart that had been engaged in a protracted, draining war. However, it wasn't all. The investigation also noted that Hackman's advanced Alzheimer's illness was a major contributing factor to his demise. It breaks my heart to think of that. Another noteworthy observation was that his stomach was empty. This indicates that he had gone a long time without eating before passing away. Now, what makes that significant? Because it raises the possibility that he was weak, confused, or possibly alone himself during those last moments. It simply raises the question of whether he knew what was going on. Did he attempt to contact for assistance? There are a lot of questions, and it's unlikely that we will ever know the answers. This is the point at which events take an even more disastrous turn. His longtime wife, Betsy Arakawa, died of hantavirus pulmonary disease, which is an entirely separate cause. You're not alone if you're asking yourself, wait, what in the world is that? It is a very uncommon but fatal infection that is spread via rat excrement. And the most terrifying aspect? It might appear out of nowhere and quickly bring you down. Dr. Jarrell claims that hantavirus infections begin with flu-like symptoms, including fever, chills, and pains, but they quickly worsen. Breathing issues can be severe, and if you don't obtain medical assistance right away, conditions could rapidly deteriorate. And Betsy experienced precisely that. After assembling a timeline, investigators discovered some terrifying information. On February 11th, Arakawa's last known activity occurred, and after that, there was nothing. No more talking. Things began to go wrong at that point. She probably thought it was just a common flu when she first started feeling ill because of the nature of hantavirus. However, things got out of hand and she passed out. She most likely entered the bathroom feeling weak, possibly attempting to reach the wash basin or toilet, and simply never returned since they discovered her corpse on her side. That image is devastating on its own. This is when things become even more depressing. By this time, Gene was still living. Consider this. He was still living in the house after his wife had passed away. Was he even aware? Has he gone in search of her? Or had his own illness left him too weak and disoriented to recognize what had happened? The thought is simply heartbreaking. Hackman's pacemaker was one of the most important pieces of evidence that supported the time frame. Yes, there are instances when technology can be unsettling. Up until February 17th, his device recorded normal heart activity. Then, on February 18th, it displayed atrial fibrillation, an abnormal rhythm that essentially indicated his heart was having trouble beating. Then, quiet, no more action. He most likely died at that same time. Therefore, if you give it some serious thought, it's likely that he was alone for a few days without realizing his wife had passed away. Just thinking about it makes your chest feel heavy. Another disheartening fact is that there was not a significant risk of hantavirus contamination in their main residence. What caused Betsy to become infected then? It turns out that there was rodent activity in other structures on their property. This implies that she might have been discovered somewhere, perhaps without even being aware of it. Furthermore, all it takes to contract hantavirus is to breathe in particles from urine or rodent droppings. It is not visible. You don't even anticipate it. One thing was evident from all the inquiries and medical conclusions. Betsy Arakawa and Gene Hackman both passed away naturally. Ultimately, it simply serves to highlight how fleeting life is. You're here 1 minute, and then everything is different. Although Gene Hackman's passing was already tragic, it is now truly terrible. The cause has been formally confirmed by the FBI, and let's just say that nobody anticipated it. The entertainment industry is stunned, his family is rocked, and what's the truth? It's more eerie than any part he's ever had. Did foul play occur? Has a long-kept secret finally come to light? Or is there anything below the surface that is even more terrifying? You won't be able to speak after the final revelation, so pay attention. The emotional journey of the family. The Hackman sisters never imagined that they would get the call that would completely upend their world. However, Elizabeth, Leslie, and Annie received the heartbreaking news that would alter everything when the phone rang on that fateful day. A tragedy they never anticipated had suddenly taken place in their father's Santa Fe estate, a location that had always been warm, funny, and full of memories. They were initially in utter shock. How could this have occurred? Leslie, in particular, found it difficult to comprehend. She believed that despite his advanced age, their father had always been robust, energetic, and in excellent physical shape. She repeatedly stated, there was no indication that there was any problem, in an attempt to persuade herself that something had to be wrong. Reality had other ideas, despite her wanting to cling to that delusion. The first astonishment soon gave way to a desperate quest for clarification. The family instantly began weighing all of the potential causes. Perhaps it was poisoning from carbon monoxide, perhaps the house had a silent leak that nobody had discovered. Of the three, Elizabeth had always been the most anxious, and she couldn't get rid of the suspicion that the cause had been something in the house. The devastating loss had already been reported to the media, and before the family had a chance to grieve, their private tragedy had turned into a public spectacle. Normally upholding absolute confidentiality, the Office of the Medical Investigator felt obliged to defy convention and make public declarations in order to quell the escalating rumors. Everyone was looking for solutions. Each news organization has their own theories. Every headline offered a fresh, dramatic interpretation of what may have occurred. To put it mildly, it was overwhelming. Tim Hackman, Gene's nephew, was at the core of the controversy, attempting to reassure the family and the media that the toxicology reports will show the truth. Toxicology is still pending. In an attempt to cut through the cacophony of irrational notions and unfounded conjecture, he declared, "That will tell us everything." Negative hypotheses are simple to conjecture. The family wants to maintain a good attitude for the time being, and we will deal with the reality as it becomes available. The sisters understood they needed to take charge of the story before it got totally out of their control, despite the pandemonium all around them. In a moving message, they reminded everyone that, although Gene Hackman was a legend to millions, he was only their father to them. To us, he was always just Dad and Grandpa, even though millions of people around the world adored and revered him for his outstanding acting career. We are heartbroken by the loss and will truly miss him. Even though the words were straightforward, they were loaded with memories, love, and now, unfathomable pain. Life would never be the same for Annie, Leslie, and Elizabeth. In addition to being a renowned actor, their father served as their pillar and constant. They now needed to choose how to proceed in a world devoid of him. Even while the truth about his last days would finally surface, one thing would always remain the same. Gene Hackman was, and always would be, their father, regardless of what the media said. We have now reached the conclusion of this video. Thank you for viewing. For more videos, please like, comment, and subscribe if you liked this one. Click the next video that appears on your screen right now to see more exciting tales.